The night they threw me out? I was 9 months pregnant. It was raining outside. I had one bag, no car, and $47 in my account. My mother-in-law stood at the door, arms crossed, eyes cold, and said, "You are too expensive for this family. Get out." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just looked down at my stomach, took a deep breath, picked up my bag, and walked out into the rain. 6 months later, she was standing at my door, hands shaking, eyes red, begging me to come back. And I smiled. And I said, just 2 words. But before I tell you those 2 words, you need to hear everything that happened in between. Because what I built in those 6 months was something no one saw coming. Not even me. My name is Elena. I grew up in a small town in Ohio. My parents weren't wealthy, but they were the most dignified people I have ever known. My father worked factory shifts, sometimes 14 hours. My mother sold handmade quilts at the weekend market. We ate simple food. We wore simple clothes. But every night, my father would say, "Elena, remember this, a person's worth is not in their bank account. It's in their character." I believed him. I still do. When I was 26, I met Daniel at a corporate conference in Chicago. He was tall, well-dressed, confident, but not arrogant. At least, that's what I thought. He brought me coffee without being asked. He remembered what I said. He listened. After 3 months of dating, he said, "I've never met anyone like you." After 1 year, he proposed. No helicopter. No grand setup. Just a quiet restaurant, a small ring, and the most honest eyes I had ever looked into. I said yes immediately. I should have asked one question first. Just one. "Tell me about your mother." Daniel came from old money. His mother, Margaret, had inherited a real estate empire from her own mother. Properties in 7 states. Office buildings. Luxury apartments. His father, Robert, had married into that empire and spent 30 years pretending he had built it himself. They lived in a 7-bedroom house with a personal chef, 2 housekeepers, and a gardener named Luis, who was the only genuinely kind person in that entire household. When Daniel took me to meet them for the first time, I wore my best dress. I rehearsed what to say. I brought wine and flowers. Margaret opened the door, looked me up and down, slowly, deliberately, and said, "Oh, you're smaller than I imagined." Not, "Hello." Not, "So nice to finally meet you." Not even, "Come in." Just, "You're smaller than I imagined." I laughed politely. Daniel squeezed my hand. That dinner lasted 3 hours. Margaret asked me questions the entire time. But they weren't really questions. They were tests. "Elena, where did you go to school?" "Elena, what does your father do?" "Elena, marketing, that's a crowded field, isn't it? Not very stable." "Elena, do you cook?" "Daniel needs proper home-cooked meals." Every question had a hidden blade inside it. I smiled through all of it. I answered every single one with grace. On the drive home, Daniel said, "She just needs time. She's protective." I nodded. But something in my stomach felt wrong. I told myself it was nerves. It wasn't nerves. It was instinct. And I should have listened. We got married the following April. Margaret offered to help plan the wedding. I was grateful. Foolish, but grateful. Within 2 weeks, she had changed the venue from the garden barn I loved to a formal hotel ballroom I had never seen. Removed 3 of my closest college friends from the guest list because she said it was too large. Chosen white lilies for every table even though I told her twice, I wanted pink peonies. Seated my mother at a table near the kitchen exit. Hired a photographer Daniel and I had never met or approved. When I saw the seating chart the week before the wedding, I sat down and stared at it for a long time. My mother, the woman who had worked her hands raw to raise me, seated near the kitchen. I went to Daniel. I showed him the chart. I said, "This isn't okay." He looked uncomfortable. He said, "Elena, she's already paid for everything. It'll cause a scene if we change it now." Paid for everything. That was the first time I heard those words used as a weapon. It would not be the last. The wedding was beautiful on the outside. Inside, I felt like a guest at my own party. Margaret gave a speech. 10 minutes long. She spoke about Daniel's childhood, his achievements, his potential. She mentioned me once. 1 sentence. "And we welcome Elena to our family." That was it. No warmth. No story. No. "She makes my son so happy." Just, "We welcome Elena to our family." Like I was a new piece of furniture. After the wedding, Daniel said it made financial sense to live with his parents temporarily. "Just for a year, Elena. We'll save up, buy our own place." I didn't want to. Every cell in my body said no. But I loved him. And I trusted him. So I moved into that 7-bedroom house. The rules became clear within the first week. Margaret controlled the kitchen. If I cooked something, she would come in, taste it, and say something like, Daniel prefers his chicken without garlic. Even though Daniel had eaten my garlic chicken 100 times and loved it. She controlled the schedule. Sunday dinners were mandatory. Family events were mandatory. Her opinion on everything, mandatory. She would walk into our bedroom without knocking. When I mentioned it to Daniel, he said, "She's always done that. It's her house." Her house. I started working more hours just to be out of that house. I got a promotion at work. My salary increased significantly. Margaret's response? Just make sure your work doesn't affect Daniel's peace at home. Not, congratulations. Not, well done. Just, don't let it disturb Daniel. A year passed. Then another. We didn't buy our own house. Every time I brought it up, Daniel had a reason. The market isn't good right now. Mom needs help with the property taxes this quarter. Let's wait until next year. Next year never came. And then, I got pregnant. I was so happy when I found out. I cried happy tears in the bathroom with the test in my hand. I told Daniel that evening. He held me and said, "This is the best day of my life." For 3 weeks, everything was softer. Even Margaret seemed warmer. She talked about the baby's room. She said she'd hire a night nurse. She bought a tiny pair of shoes and left them on my dresser. I thought, maybe this is the turning point. Maybe this is when we finally become a real family. I was wrong. The problems started in my second trimester. My pregnancy was not easy. I had severe morning sickness until month 5. I couldn't work full-time anymore. My doctor put me on partial bed rest. My income dropped. And that is when Margaret changed. Small things first. She stopped cooking extra portions for me. She stopped asking how my appointments went. She started sighing loudly when I asked Luis to bring me water. Then came the comments. "Elena, are you sure you need that extra pillow? The couch cushions are expensive. Elena, the doctor visits are adding up. Is every single one necessary? Elena, you've been home for 3 weeks. It must be nice to rest while everyone else works." I was growing a human being. I was on doctor-ordered bed rest. And she was making me feel like a burden for breathing. I told Daniel. Every time. And every time, he would get quiet. And then say something like, "She doesn't mean it that way. She's just stressed about money." Stressed about money. This woman owned properties in 7 states. She had a personal chef. She was stressed about my prenatal vitamins. In my 8th month. I heard them talking in the kitchen. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I had come down for a glass of water at midnight. I heard Margaret's voice, low and sharp. "Daniel, this cannot continue. She doesn't work. She eats. She rests. She has appointments every week. This baby is going to cost us even more." I did not agree to support a wife who contributes nothing. I stood completely still. Then I heard Daniel. He didn't defend me. He said, "I know, Mom. I'll talk to her." I went back upstairs. I sat on the edge of the bed. I put my hand on my stomach. And I whispered to my baby, "I will never let anyone make you feel like a burden. I promise you that." It happened on a Thursday. I was 9 months pregnant. 2 weeks from my due date. Margaret called a family meeting after dinner. She sat at the head of the table. Robert sat beside her, looking at the floor. Daniel sat across from me, and he would not meet my eyes. That's when I knew. Margaret folded her hands and said, "Elena, we have made a decision as a family. You have been living in this house for over 2 years. You have not contributed financially for the past 4 months. With the baby coming, the expenses will increase further. We cannot continue to support you. We think it would be best if you found your own arrangements." Silence. I looked at Daniel. He was still looking at the floor. I said, "Daniel, are you hearing this?" He finally looked up. And he said the 7 words that ended our marriage. "Elena, maybe she has a point. Maybe she has a point." I stood up. Very slowly. Very carefully. Because I was 9 months pregnant and I had to be careful. I went upstairs. I packed 1 bag, just the essentials. My documents. My laptop. My mother's old watch. Baby clothes I had bought myself. I came downstairs. Margaret was still sitting at the table. She didn't look guilty. She looked satisfied. I stood in front of her. I looked her directly in the eyes. And I said, calmly, "I will remember this night for the rest of my life. And so will you." She almost laughed. I walked out the door. It was raining. I had 1 bag. $47 in my account. And a baby who would arrive in 2 weeks. I called my mother. She picked up on the second ring. I said 2 words. "Mom, please." She said, "My mother drove 4 hours through the rain. She arrived at 2 a.m. She held me in the parking lot of a gas station for a long time without saying anything. Then she said, "We're going home." I moved back to my parents' house in Ohio. 10 days later, my daughter was born. I named her Rose. She was 7 pounds, 4 ounces. She had dark eyes that looked like she already understood everything. I lay in that hospital bed, holding her. And I felt something shift inside me. Not sadness. Not anger. Clarity. I knew exactly what I needed to do. My maternity leave lasted 8 weeks. During those 8 weeks, I slept when Rose slept. And when Rose slept, I worked. I contacted my old clients. I reached out to former colleagues. I started doing freelance marketing consulting from my childhood bedroom. By week 4, I had 3 clients. By week 8, I had 7. My income had already surpassed what I made before my pregnancy. I filed for divorce on a Tuesday. The lawyer I hired was the best in the county. A woman named Sandra, who had the calm of someone who had won every important fight she had ever entered. She looked at my case and said, "Asterisk," he allowed.